Tell us your name, what position are you running for, and why you chose to run.
My name is Will Hornaday. I'm running for City Council, and I decided to run because I think there's room for another voice on City Council regarding development, the environment, and just accountability.
What specifically would you like to achieve during your time on City Council if elected?
I think I'd like to see more community involvement in the process and welcoming that involvement so that we can all kind of work together to solve some of our these aren't, cities are complex ecosystems, and there's not just a quick and easy answer all the time. And I think that
I don't know what happened. Sorry about that.
sorry.
Okay.
So I think that that's something that the more people we hear from and the more people we listen to fully, the better the community can grow together. Because I think we can achieve a lot.
What are your views on homelessness in Asheville, and how do you feel currently it has been handled?
I think it's one of the most complicated issues that every city is facing, and our city's no different. And I think having a consultant come in at this point is probably the best solution that the city's moving forward with. But with that consultant, I think there needs to be a lot. Make sure that stakeholders are there, from communities to the police to trash pickup to the nonprofit advocacy groups already. All need a bigger stake in forming what this consultant points us to, and then we need to commit to it and stay with one plan. We can't keep shifting back and forth. One plan, and go forward, and let's be innovative. That's what cities are. Cities are where we can take big risks and make huge jumps. It's not at the state or national level. It can happen here. So that's what I'd like to see.
In addition to that question, I have a little bit more. What are your thoughts on low barrier shelters, camping, panhandling, and the needle program? And how would you move forward on those issues if elected? So camping, panhandling, needle program, and low barrier shelters.
I'm not an expert on the unhoused, and I know that our town has experts, and I think this goes back to the first, where talking when you're with the consultant, all the stakeholders, there is a demand for a camping, and I don't know if that's right or if that's wrong. But the consultant needs to educate the community on why we're doing this path, and that goes to the needles, panhandling. Was panhandling one? Then that's kind of unique. I don't. I heard long ago, and you see something and you just gotta do it. Where panhandling doesn't help the person, but you feel that empathy when you're at a stoplight and there's a family asking for money. And so panhandling's kind of, I add that to something the consultant can kind of give us parameters on what's enforceable, what's doable, and what we can do as a community to help these our neighbors who are having a really hard time.
What do you see as the biggest issue Asheville City and Buncombe County, and even as specifically as local neighborhoods, are facing today, and how will you tackle those issues during your time if elected?
So the issues that I see is development and how that affects the environment. We have 19 miles of the French Broad River and the Swannanoa River. The Bacote and Haith Branch are both going to be listed in May as impaired waterways, and that's from more runoff is going into these rivers, and because this Wananoa had been a success story. And so if development and the runoff from development and the loss of the tree canopy and the pressures of this being a very desirable place to live for a lot of people is something we can't avoid, but we can approach it honestly and openly with our community on how we want to grow. And I think from our comprehensive plan, we talk about all those buckets, and we can't have one faction of that bucket moving ahead of everybody else, whether that's development or whether that's we all need to move all of those together, and that's how a comprehensive plan can work for our community.
One of the biggest problems in the city is that the communities are often left out of big decisions and conversations. Will you listen to all of the concerns from all constituents, even the ones who may not share your same beliefs, on how to make Asheville a place for everyone? And how do you plan to involve residents and communities in the decision-making process in our town? Would you be willing to hold quarterly meetings on a rotating basis in the neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think moving even city council meetings on contentious issues can make it easier for people to get there. This whole, I don't know if we'll get to this, so I want to say it now. I think the last 2 years, the pandemic has been really hard on, and it's been admirable, the amount of build out that has happened to have a virtual meeting, but it's not the way to conduct business. It's an abbreviated form, and it's not a way to really discuss with your neighbors how to. So the pandemic has kind of made the interaction between groups more difficult, and as we move out of that, hopefully, we need to reestablish sort of a communication line with with whether it's neighborhood associations or whether it's nonprofits, how we can better get that information and be aware, because a city council position is not for me to mandate things. It's to listen to the community, and that's my job, is to find the community and listen to the community. And quarterly gatherings for information is entirely acceptable as a way to move forward.
Great.
Did that answer? Was that everything?
You answered it all. Okay. Yep. One of the biggest issues affecting downtown residents, particularly visitors and small businesses, is transients sleeping and camping in Pritchard Park on sidewalks and businesses' entryways. What is the solution to the transient population, and what can be done to clean up and increase safety specifically in downtown? And when I say transients, I mean those that are homeless and travel in and travel out, because that's like a whole nother subset.
Yeah, the travelers, yeah. I walk downtown most mornings. We walk with our dogs downtown, and it's increased a lot. And it's another thing that the pandemic is magnified, I would say. And I've talked to restaurant owners who say, I come in at 8 a.m. and I walk over somebody to get into my restaurant, and I leave at 11 and step over another person, and I'm threatened because I have money. They know people leaving a restaurant at 11 o'clock have money in their pocket. And so there is a safety problem, but, and that kind of goes back to, or goes to a police monitoring of that a little more robustly. But showers, trash cans, and toilets. That is what we are severely lacking for that person who's camping, whether that's in a park or in an entryway, an alcove. And we've sat for 2 years talking about the Haywood Street bathrooms that they get broken, so they're just closed. And as someone who drinks a couple of cups of coffee before I start my dog walk, I kind of know where the bathrooms are. And at 7:30, and there's not a lot of them. And I think that's something we can do immediately and quickly, and work with the nonprofits to address the sleeping bags left behind in a doorway, or Pritchard Park being just needles, and no longer a place for the community, the full community.
Do you agree with defunding the police?
I don't agree with defunding the police, and I think that an incredibly difficult job is I don't know where that defund the police has gotten so much traction. I think there is a obvious need to combine a social service and EMS can solve some of the problems. But if you have your tire slashed in West Asheville and you call the police and they say we're not responding to that, it just pushes things away. So I think I'd like to understand better how we as a city are going to move forward with police service for everyone. And it's not in a defunding, but I think it's a refocusing of resources where they can be used better than they are. Well, I don't know, better than they are now, but things are different now than they were 5 years ago.
Well, and when you say refocusing, some people would take that as like reallocating funds. And if you were to reallocate funds, is that what I'm understanding? You saying that you would reallocate those funds to things within the departments?
Within the police budget?
Yeah, and if so, would you let the chief of police and those people guide you on where they thought that those reallocations of funds should go?
I think the police really see a lot more than I see, and I think yes, they need to have a stake at the table, and I think they also, as with all jobs, there's oversight, and like at my job, you know, if a client's unhappy, then I need to do something to rectify it, or at least understand that process. And that's what I would like to also see with the police is more, and have more a press conference, maybe a weekly press conference where they just kind of talk about the things that are there instead of us being surprised by an incident in Smile Starters or something, you know, that's something that was just terrible. But that's all we ever hear is the terrible things. And I know there's a lot of hard work that goes in, and it's demoralizing, I think, when it's always damage control. But there should be some press conference to just as an update, news update, where we are, the state of policing in Asheville this week is 6 arrests, you know, and just kind of talk about where things are happening instead of, oh, I can't believe everybody's, well, anyway, that's where I am.
Okay. There are many community members who would like transparency regarding how nonprofits spend the taxpayer-funded grants. Would you support nonprofits being required to open their books by line item to the taxpayers? Why or why not? So right now they're required, they show their taxes, and you can see, you know, this is a $500,000, $1 million nonprofit, but
Annual
they
report.
don't explain how that money is being allocated throughout the company. And some community members would like to know how those grant-funded nonprofits are spending that money specifically by line item. Would you support opening up that transparency, considering that's taxpayers' money being pushed into those nonprofits?
This is the first time I've ever heard that, and I feel terrible about that. But and I would probably need to look at this more. But I would, off the top of my head, it sounds like something that there's a threshold for an amount of money where, or maybe, I don't see where that would be fought against for nonprofits? Is that being fought against by nonprofits?
No, it's just not a requirement, so
It's
it's
not
not
a requirement.
done, and they aren't, they don't
And that's
have.
a city requirement or a state requirement?
No, the only thing that they're required to do is give their taxes, not their line item allocation of how that money is being spent.
So it's sort of about freedom of information.
Right, I think
of.
what they're saying is we as the taxpayers would like to see how you're spending the money that is being funded by grants that are given, the grants are funded by the taxpayers, so we just wanna see how you're
City
spending
grants,
it.
like, okay, then yes, then that is, if it's city money and it's going into there, I think the more openness and accountability everybody has is the more that sort of honors the spirit of where I'd like to see the city go.
Yeah, okay. Do you
It's
believe?
a long walk to get there, but I'm sorry.
No problem. We'll do one more question and then I'll give you a final thought. Let me pick a good one here.
Yeah, get a good one.
Okay, it's gonna be, do you agree that boards and commissions would be better off being reduced, or do you see value in those groups as they are?
Barbara and I were talking outside about that a bit, and I'm on a commission, and I've gone to board meetings, and I have the deepest respect for someone who puts that much time and effort outside of myself for that role. And there's a lot of knowledge there, and there's a lot of things that take a long time to develop. And reducing the boards and commissions is reducing from the bottom up form of community input to a top down. And I think our community is very diverse and very complicated, and the more people who are involved in that process, the better it is. And I'm in full support of the current system, but with training. I love my commission, and I know that our training was right when we started. There needs to be ongoing training. There's ongoing issues. There's things that change, and but there needs to be a more focus on training. And we've had a pandemic the last couple of years, and that's really messed up the boards and commissions with some really weird boards and commission meetings over spotty Zoom calls. But training is important, and even when I sat in on two of the restructuring Zoom calls, the overall input I was seeing from everyone there is, do not do this. So I think we need to listen to our community and do not do this. Because there's a lot of value in those boards and commissions and training. And that was the other thing, the 6 or 7 boards at the top, which I'm a member of a quasi-judicial, so it wouldn't be affected by that. But there's no talk of more training for us, or zoning and planning and zoning. Everybody needs more training, and I wish there was as much effort going to training right now as there was to reducing these boards.
Okay, so we'll end on a final thought, and that's just anything you want to tell the voters about why they should vote for you, or any final thoughts of your own.
Yeah, I think people should vote for me. I am a neighborhood person. I started volunteering at the school and formed at the Claxton Elementary, where we walked our son, and then got involved in our neighborhood, and then the business community on Charlotte Street, and then now I'm on the Historic Resources Commission, and so and we all have like the most, and it kind of goes back to some of your other questions, where the most knowledgeable people about my neighborhood are my neighbors. And when you take them out of the conversation, it hurts. It hurts our feelings, and it hurts our neighborhoods. And we may not always be right, but we need to be heard and understood, because we do have a point of view, from street trees on Vermont to adding a sidewalk in Hall Creek. Let's listen to our communities and let's kind of move things along. I've got a question for you. What in the last few years, 5 years, say, is the best thing that you've seen happen from the city? Like, what is a project, a thing? It could just be something small or something big. What's something big that you see the city has been a great amenity to our collective city?
They saved our library when we.
Which library?
Oakley.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Oakley
they saved
Library.
all four of them too, with the campaign we did, so they listened.
I don't know that it's a project, but I do feel like there are certain council members who are more open than others, and that communication is so unusual, and we're getting that more recently, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And the communication with some of the neighborhoods and the neighborhood associations and the community groups is growing, and I'd like to think that's because we're getting somewhere and not because it's an election year, but I definitely appreciate
Yeah,
that
the attention.
communication. I like the thought of our leadership being accessible. And when they're not accessible, I don't really want them leading my neighborhood, my city, or
Right.
anything else. Because like you said, having these community groups and these neighborhoods weigh in on what's going on in their neighborhoods is kind of essential to the conversation. And when that's not happening, that's a huge problem, so.
So when the Ramada went, that was a big issue. How did you feel? Did you feel heard then? That was
No.
Then it's changed since then.
Yes.
Were you heard now?
Well, we've kind of forced them to listen in a lot of ways. We've
Mhm.
collected and we've, gotten more people involved, and we've spoken to them with respect and with solutions. And that seems to have gotten us a little bit further in the conversation and dialogue.
Yeah.
And so, it takes,
And it's the organic way that
Tenacity.
and we're having the same thing in our neighborhood, where it takes a disaster for some change, a great loss, but kind of so you didn't feel heard much on the Ramada,
no.
and you kind of had
We sort of felt like the minority, even though we were speaking
Oh, I
for a
think that-
lot
yeah.
of our community. And we were also made aware that nobody really knew what it was. Nobody really knew
it
what
changed
barrier
at the very
meant.
end.
Everybody's like, it's, stuff is happening, but I don't understand why.
I think we should define things where it could take you in. We need to simplify some process, and to Emily Ball and all her credit, that it is an incredibly complicated trying to cobble together that plan during a pandemic, during freezing weather. There was all this all hitting at the same time, but I wish there would have been, and I wrote a letter to council at that time that I understood what they were doing, but I wish the community could have.
From the start.
This could have been a win.
From the start, if they would have involved
Yeah.
the community and
It
it would
could
have
have
been
feel
managed
good.
properly, could have been a whole different.
I
we wouldn't
agree.
even be having this
Communication
conversation.
is a lacking, and I don't understand why. Why something so simple as, from what we were saying about having a police press conference. I don't think press conference is the right word. Sit and chat. But just not coffee with a cop, but a real hard questions coming from people at the newspaper saying, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Answering questions, talking to the community more. I think we all need to kind of put down our sharp sticks, and we can work better together.
Well, and I'm gonna finish on this, and that is that everybody's thirsty to be heard and to be a part of the conversation. And we're getting somewhere finally, but it should have happened a long time ago. It makes no sense
Right.
to have elected leaders that we put in office who aren't even willing to have these hard conversations. And there are still people in our communities right now who have that same thirst for answers
Mhm.
and they aren't getting them. So that's why we're even doing this whole thing in the first place,
I
is
get it.
because it's like, let's figure out who these people are, because it matters.
It does matter.
It
And you need to
matters.
find out before they're there.
That's right. I want to see you say it. I want to
Right.
hear you say it. I want you to come raw and real. And, you know, that's just it.
I applaud y'all for doing this, and that's like, if I could have 20 of these
Yeah.
to do, I think it would. If we all should, and there's a lot of good people running who have a lot of great ideas,
Yeah.
and just but extending just sort of. I think it needs to kind of come with some bigger thoughts instead of
Like round table meeting
yeah.
with this kind of stuff.
and I think that would be, and if elected, I would make that a priority. And I'm out there. I have a full-time job. This isn't. This is hard to run for city council, and it takes a lot of time, and it can take as much time as you have. And I need help.
Yeah.
I don't know all the answers, and I know where the answers are, though, and or at least I know where to ask, where to tell me to point. That's what I hope to do.
Well, and that's a great way to start. So we appreciate your time so much.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.